Alright, so today we're going to start working on my friend's gas tank. It's off a 70s CB500. He's looking to go more towards a cafe racer style than taking it back to original. So what we've already done is we went ahead and took off the Honda logo, used to be right here. So we went ahead and removed that, and then there's a little metal strip in there with threaded nut plates for the logo itself to screw into. So we've gone ahead and cut that out, and so that's what you see there. Basically we did this because he's looking for more of a sleek, streamlined look, so we're gonna end up bondoing over this as well as these few dents we've got here and on here. So we've gone ahead and we've removed most of the old paint, removed that strip that we just talked about, and we've sanded it down a little and then acetoned it. So now it's nice and clean and the Bondo is going to stick good to it. So we'll go ahead and start that. So now where some of these bigger dents are, it's probably going to take us a couple times. We're going to have to fill it and then come through and sand it and build it up again and sand it some more so we get that nice curved shape. So we'll just let this cure and then we'll move on to sanding it. Alright, so our Bondo has cured and we're going to go ahead and start sanding it. We're going to do this little part on the top first. The way I like to do it is using a sanding block just so we can kind of try and keep that contour of the tank and not get any divots or anything from if you were just sanding it with your hand, the little marks your finger would make. We're going to start out with 60 grit sandpaper and get progressively finer as we get closer and closer. So we'll just go ahead and start. So now that we've knocked the majority of it off, we're going to come in with our air sander and knock the rest down and try and get a smooth, flush surface going. We're using 120 grit on our sander, so that's slightly finer than what we're using to hand sand it. So there we go. We got a nice smooth surface on our top where those dents were. Now we'll just go ahead and repeat this process on the side here, and then we'll show you what to do next. Alright, so we've gone ahead and sanded this and it's starting to turn out pretty good. You can see we've got the contour we're looking for with this, but we do, however, have kind of a flat spot right here. So we're going to add just a little more Bondo so we get that nice bubble right there, and then we'll sand it down some more. Alright, so we'll go ahead and let that cure, and then we'll keep sanding kind of like this and like that, and we'll get that nice contour we're looking for. Our second or third coat of Bondo has dried, so we'll go ahead and go back to sanding this part down. It shouldn't take us too long since this is just a thin coat, and then we'll move on to the next step. So we're just finishing up sanding with some 400 grit paper. We've got it pretty smooth and all the sanding marks taken out from our 80 grit sandpaper. Now what we're going to do is take our 400 grit and some water, and we're going to wet sand all of this down so that way it's nice and smooth for when we prime it. So we finished wet sanding, and you can see we've got a nice curve right here, and it kind of goes into that bubble. You can see how many different coats it's taken us to achieve that, as well as our top. That didn't take nearly as many, but the side's done and so is the top. So now what we're going to do is we're going to prime it with a sandable primer and then sand it down again, and that's going to show us any low spots, and you'll kind of see how that works. But before we prime it, what we need to do is clean it up with some acetone and a cloth, just to get any dust, fingerprints, any of the water from the wet sanding. So we'll go ahead and wipe everything down. And then we'll let that set for a second, and we'll go ahead and prime it. So we'll go ahead and prime it. Now, with this primer, we don't want to put it on so thick that it runs, but at the same time we do want a decent coat, because you're going to see, even though you thought that you got it perfectly smooth with the wet sanding, when we put the primer on, it's going to look kind of bubbled and rough, and once we wet sand that out, that's going to take care of it. So we're not priming the whole tank at this point, we just want to do the spots where the Bondo is. So we'll go ahead and we'll let that coat dry. We'll put probably one or two more on, and then we'll move on to the next step. So our primer has cured, and you can see right here, this is where we put some Bondo on, and you can see it's kind of rough and a different color. Well, this next step is gonna take care of it, so that way when we actually prime it, we have a nice smooth finish. So what we're gonna do is take some 400 grit sandpaper, and this has to be waterproof, and just some regular water, and we're gonna go ahead and just wet sand all the areas where we've Bondoed. And by doing this, we're not taking very much off, which is what we want, and it's gonna show us any low spots that we have in our tank, because those are gonna stay dark, where everything else will be sanded down to the metal. Alright, so we've sanded everywhere that had Bondo and primer on it. Now what we're going to do is take a wet paper towel and just wipe up all the wet primer and get it nice and clean so we can see what we get. Now you can see on the top of the tank here, it looks pretty good. We got a couple little marks there and a slightly low spot there, but other than that, that primer has gone and filled in all the little divots and any little, almost like the grit of a sandpaper that we had in our Bondo, and so that's nice and smooth. The next time we prime it, you won't get that little spot. Now on the side of our tank, looks like we've got a little bit of a low spot right here and right there. So what we'll do is we'll take a little bit of glazing putty and just go over that, smooth it out again, prime it, sand it, do this, and then it'll be ready for its final coat of primer. We've touched up our couple little low spots and then primed it again, and then wet sanded that out just to get any little tiny low spots. So our tank is finally done and looks good. We got nice contoured edges like we wanted on both sides. and our top is flat. So that'll do it. Join us in the spring when we finish priming it and then put an actual coat of paint on it. Thanks for watching.